Okay, so the entire foundation of this book, the whole thing, rests on one single crucial distinction. It argues that to even begin to understand this hidden history, you have to realize we're not just talking about one kind of God, we're talking about two, and they are fundamentally different kinds of beings. On one hand, you've got the true creator of the universe. Now, this isn't some guy on a throne in the sky. It's an all-encompassing, ever-present force that is creation itself. It can't get jealous or angry or go to war. But then, you have the biblical gods, right? Like Yahweh and Jehovah. The book describes them as physical, flawed, and kind of limited beings who are always demanding proof of loyalty and honestly show some very human-like emotions.
This one word you see here, ubiquitous, is basically the key that unlocks the book's entire argument. I mean, think about it. You've heard stories like God asking Abraham for a sacrifice just to prove his loyalty. The author's point is really simple. A truly ubiquitous, all-knowing creator, well, it wouldn't need proof of anything. It would already know what's in your heart. The test itself wouldn't make any sense.
So, of course, this leads us to the big, flashing question. If these powerful, and let's be honest, often angry gods of the Old Testament aren't the ultimate creator of the universe, then who in the world were they? And where do they come from? The book gives them a name, the Anunnaki. It claims this is the group that the book of Genesis calls the Elohim. And according to this text, we're not talking about spiritual deities here. These were advanced, flesh and blood beings who came to Earth in actual ships from their...
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Curt Williams, and welcome to the Soul and the Body Show. I am a sage and a guru. I've been away for a while simply because about a year ago, the city that I'm from burnt down, Altadena, California. And so I thought it would be very important if just to see what I could do. I am also a singer, so I began to attempt to do fundraising as a singer. So I've been doing gigs for the last year. But now I'm back to take care of the business at hand, which is advanced spirituality. Now, the last time I was here, I was discussing my book, Ungodly Gods. Well, we're a little past that now. We're into the guru and sage part of who I am, which is the most important part. What is a sage? A sage is a teacher. I am a teacher of advanced spirituality. What is advanced spirituality? Advanced spirituality is a process whereby, well, I'm going to break it down slowly. It's nothing like you could have imagined, and it's nothing like what you hear in church. People believe that anyone who is righteous in their soul and in their inside is a spiritualist, but that's not the case. It's a very specific kind of thing that I do. Now, I think I will begin by explaining what it takes to be a spiritualist and a guru. The best way to do that is to really explain where I come from and my road to getting to this point. I began my journey as a young child, really, age of 3. I was attending child evangelist school. I know that sounds sort of odd that a 3-year-old would attend child evangelist school. However, my grandmother was a child evangelist. And since she had to babysit me, well, I had to go with her to this school. Now, this school was for people who taught Sunday school. to children from what age 2 years old to adolescent to 12 or 13 and it was all the things that you would expect in a child evangelist type school, simple lessons about Jesus, simple lessons about the disciples and about God and biblical principles. Very simple. And they would have books with songs in it. It was very, very cute. Now, when I say I attended child evangelist school, what I mean is that while my grandmother was babysitting me, I would go to a house in the back and play with the other little children who were being babysit. It was back in the early 60s, like 1962 or 61, and they didn't have Legos yet, but they did have those little round things with the little holes in them, and you put the little sticks in them, and you make animals and whatever you want to make. So I wouldn't play that for one day, and I got a little bored with that, and come to find out that the thing that my grandmother was doing on the inside was she was getting these lessons. However, they had these big giant murals that would go with each lesson. For example, Jesus walking on water, for instance. So they would take these big pictures, these murals of Jesus walking across water. Now, I imagine these murals were pretty expensive. And so instead of purchasing the murals, you were able to take the mural and lay it on a glass case. Now, this glass case had lights in it. You would place the mural down onto the case. And then you would take a flannel sheet, a white flannel sheet that you can kind of see through. And you would place that on top. Now you spread this, and now you could see Jesus and the water and all the stuff on here. With colors, we were able to trace this whole thing out. And by the time you finish, you had the scene that you can take to your Sunday school class and present there, and it only cost like 10 cents. I was able to, at 3 years old, I was able to come up and join my grandmother and do the little coloring and all this thing for the story itself. I got pretty good at it, yeah. So it was more art than study. However, this is what I did. And then my grandmother, by the time I was 5.5 years old, she would drive me to kindergarten, afternoon class, and I would go to my kindergarten class. And from then on, everything was normal, because by the time I got to first grade, I had to go to school early, so I wasn't able to go to shop. But that was the beginning. By the time I became an adult, I was the kind of person, like you hear all the time, where people go to church all day, every day, for hours. Now, I played sports, so I didn't have to go all day, every day, but Sunday was from very early, because my grandmother was the kind of person, she had to go pick up as many kids as she can squeeze into her station wagon and take them to church. When I look back on it, what an amazing thing it was. My grandmother would literally see children outside playing on a Sunday morning and simply stop and knock on the door and ask the parents, "Hey, I'm Sister Wilfong. I take children to church. Can I take your kids to church?" Now imagine these parents who were about 30 years old and probably had been hanging out that night and staying home. Staying out, and they really wanted to get some rest on a Sunday morning. And you had a woman that was willing to pick up your children and take them to church because you went to church. And you kind of tired, but this lady, this sweet woman, is going to come and pick them up every Sunday. You don't have to worry about them because she's Sister Wilfong. And she would pick them up. All you had to do was have them dressed and ready. And some of the kids would be really mad because they didn't want to go, but they had to go. And could you imagine the peace in that house when your children are leave at 8 o'clock in the morning and they don't come back till 2 o'clock after dinner? It was quite a blessing for the children, and I'm sure it was quite a blessing for the parents. Anyway, so this is how I was raised. I was a believer. I was a believer because, as many people are, we grow up and our parents pretty much tell us what to believe. The church that I attended was the Church of God in Christ, which is a holiness church. They call them holy rollers because they do a lot of movement and a lot of dancing and a lot of shouting, and they get happy, is what they call it. They get really, really happy and their praising of the Lord. And one thing that I noticed, however, my grandmother was the church mother. My grandfather was president of the state deacon board. However, I never saw my grandparents getting excited and jumping up, and they were always pretty cool and would just sit back like they were enjoying the show. So that's what I did. I never had the notion to get up, and I tried to understand how this thing worked, how this Holy Ghost that would enter people worked, but I never quite understood it. However, I did the best I can as a believer. I believed that it was real. Now, as I became a teenager, I became a little more particular about the things that I believed, about the things that I was taught. And I began to ask a lot of questions about things about this religion that I didn't quite understand. And so, but I really deep down inside wanted to be a preacher. I wanted to be a preacher. I knew that preachers were cool. They were cool, and I was a very ambitious wannabe preacher. I wanted to have the biggest church, and I wanted my church to be so big that it had a hospital to go with it and a school to go with it. Before I was finished, I wanted a university and all these things that I am sure a righteous pastor of a church would not have the desire to do, because most of the pastors who have churches like that are obnoxious and into it for the wrong reason. However, here I was having a desire to be a minister of the gospel. But if I'm to be perfectly honest with you, there was a young lady that grew up with me, and she attended elementary school at the same time I did. Now, she had a Bible study at her house, and I think I really wanted to impress her. I think I liked her more than I liked church. And so I believe that my main focus of becoming this pastor was because I was in love with Irene. Now, she knew something was kind of off when she asked me one day. She said, "Curt, if you're in this to talk to me and not about God's work, you can forget it." Well, you can imagine how my feelings were hurt at this revelation. Oh, it hurt me so bad because but she was right. I wanted her, I liked her more than I liked listening to the preachers. And then some of the stories that the preachers were a little odd to me. I found some of them to be a little incredible, to be perfectly honest with you. But yet and still, I was attending Fred Price's church, which was the most popular evangelical church in Los Angeles at the time. I would have to come from my city and drive, and I was so serious that I would be like one of the first ones in line before the sun came up with one of them big giant Bibles. I wanted people to see how sincere I was about all this. Had a big Bible. And the church itself was really, really an amazing church. One of the most pleasurable times that they had in the church was when it came time for the offering. When they gave money, they had a song that went with it called it was something like, I can't be God giving. The more I give to him, the more he gives to me. So I keep right on giving because it's really true. I can't be God. I mean, and people were writing checks, I even tried to, do that. I wrote, I was trying to look like, I was trying to fit in and be a good, I was always curious about this tongue speaking thing because they did this in a very special way. They had these special gifted women at the church that could interpret speaking in tongues. And so what would happen is somebody would start blurting out speaking in tongues, blah, 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 you know how it goes. I don't want to mimic. And so they would blurt that out, and then someone from across the building would begin to interpret. I thought that was so fascinating, and I thought those particular women were so gifted to be able to do that, to have the ability to do that. I just thought that was the most gifted thing I had ever seen. And so one day I was in the church and somebody began to blurt out, speaking of tongues. Now, there were actually a couple of women at the church that had this ability. And so what usually would happen is if both of them started interpreting at the same time, one would yield to the other. And so this particular time, neither one of the ladies yielded. And they both, the tongue came this way and the interpretations came from here and over here. And neither lady yielded, and they kept on. And I thought it was quite odd and weird that they were saying two completely different things. And that really kind of shook me. I mean, I said, wait a minute. She's speaking in tongues saying one thing, and this woman heard this. I was like, are they making this up? So I said to myself, look, this is what I'm going to do. They had a tongue speaking class. And so I said, I need to go and attend this tongue speaking class because I want to know more about it. I want to know how it works and how real this is. So I went to the tongue speaking class, excuse me. I went to the tongue speaking class, and I was there with another guy, and we sat down with our tongue speaking instructor. And what he did was fascinating. He said that he explained the purpose of speaking in tongues, and he read a scripture that said something to the effect of, the holy ones will speak in unknown tongues. I said, okay. And then he gave me examples of how to do this. And so, he said, okay, you try it. And then you try it. So we both tried it, and he explained that the purpose of speaking in tongues was, imagine that you were in a long line to talk to God. God is way up here, and the line to talk to God is a mile long. Well, if you have the ability to speak in tongues, that means you get to go to the front of the line. Like Santa Claus. And I really had a problem with that. Because I just thought it was rather goofy, to be perfectly honest with you. And to butt in line so God can talk to you and everybody else has to wait. So I began to have a sort of very serious look at this thing I was studying. I was still a legitimate believer. I was, I tried to believe. So this is where it gets interesting. I had a small construction company gig, just 3 or 4 of us, whatever. And there was a man that my mother knew. He owned beauty salons. He owned like 3 or 4 of them around town, and he got me to do some work in one of his buildings, and when I saw him, I realized that he had a busted arm, really bad. He was kind of juicy and runny, and so I told him, hey, my man, God could heal that. There was some scripture that by his stripes ye were healed or something. And his response was, yeah, I can heal it too. And I said, I don't believe you had me. No, he just said, I don't believe you had me. God could heal your arm. He said it again. I know what you said. I can heal my own arm. I said, look, bro, I ain't talking about you. I'm talking about the Lord. He said, Curt, I know what you're talking about, but he said, let me tell you something. I want to challenge you. He challenged me. I'm starting a course in beginning meditation. And I want to challenge you to come to my course, since you are so embedded in your belief system, and you should be secure enough to come and check out my course in beginning meditation. It's going to specialize in weight loss. Obviously, you don't need to be there for that, but you will be able to take the meditation part if you want, and then you begin to understand how what I'm talking about, being able to heal my own arm. So I was like, man, I'm rebuking, but I'm not scared of your class. That's how strong my faith was. Yeah, I was very strong in my faith. And so I came to his class, and but the sign-up fee was a sign-up fee. It was like $30 you had to pay. You signed up for the course. Now, what happened after that was, it was indeed a life-changing experience for me. I started this conversation about what is a guru and how did I become a guru? Well, the thing about it, he was a guru with a charter from the Church of Divine Autonomy. That's what it was called at the time. So he was a guru, studied, got some kind of degree in guruism, some kind of way. And so anyway, he taught us how to meditate. The same kind of meditation that I'm teaching now here, where you run your energy and with a grounding cord, you bring in Earth's energy up the legs, you bring in cosmic energy from the chakra and into the palm of your hands, into your body, into each chakra, the 7 main chakras. You blend, cleanse, purify, and send the energy down the grounding cord. And so he taught this. He gave us handouts, so we got to see on paper what it was. And okay, so he showed us how to do it. And he sat there and said, first you take a deep breath, and you bring this air in from the ground, and you do this. And we're looking at him. Class is full. There's like about 35 people in there. And I'm sitting right next to the window. And so he said, okay, we're all going to begin. What happened next pretty much changed my life. Because when I say I took a breath in, what really happened was as soon as I took this breath, there was an aromatic aroma that penetrated my nasal cavities in a way in which I knew exactly what it was. It was Wonder Bread. I knew it was Wonder Bread because when I was in the 6th grade, we went to the Wonder Bread Bakery. And if you ever go to a Wonder Bread Bakery or any kind of bakery like that, as it's in a building that's where they make the stuff, you leave there and you smell like a bakery for about 3-4 days. It's hard to even wash up. That's how piercing it is when they're making it like that. You smell like a biscuit. And so the scent was so strong and precise. I knew it was Wonder Bread. There wasn't no way, and it wasn't just kind of in the room. It was as if somebody had raised the window up and was blowing it in the room. And my eyes popped open, and I nudged the person sitting next to me, and I said, "Hey, do you smell that bread?" And the person said, "No, I don't smell any bread." I'm like, what? How can you not smell the bread? I thought something was wrong with him. So I nudged the person sitting over here. I said, hey, do you smell all that bread? And he said, no. I'm like, wait a minute. Something must be wrong with these people. They don't smell all that bread. By this time, the guru, the instructor, he noticed there was a commotion over there. He noticed I was talking. And he said, "Curt, what's the problem?" I immediately said, "Do you smell that bread?" And amazingly, he said, "Yeah, I smell it. And I can tell you where it's coming from." And he pointed to a woman, a young lady that was sitting in the back row. And he said, "Young lady, what are you thinking about right now?" She said, "I'm thinking about a loaf of Wonder Bread that I bought on my way over here. It's in the car, and I can't wait to go home and eat it." That's when I freaked out. When I say this was the beginning of this extraordinary journey that I've been on, what just happened? Now, it wasn't the shock of the fact that I realized I must have been reading her mind. That's not the thing that got me. What got me so much is the fact that how did that teacher, who had 35 people in this class, know which person was thinking about the bread? Specifically, knew which person it was. Now that's what freaked me out. I'm like, how in the hell did you do that? Did you pull that? And I never asked him. How, what was that? But I left going, just how in the hell did he do that? I just couldn't. It was the most incredible thing I'd ever seen from a psychic standpoint. So I left the class, and he called me the next day, and he said, Curt, like I said, he told me that he was canceling all the class, giving everybody their money back simply because he felt that he had discovered a prodigy who was me. They were told if ever you run into somebody like that, you got to grab on to them pretty quick and make sure because you have somebody who has an aptitude for this. And so, what makes a person a guru? To answer the question, to become a guru, you need to have a guru. So this was 50 years ago. He became my manager, actually, and wanted to manage my music career but at the same time, we went through a daily regimen of this study. It was basically an awful lot of metaphysics. Metaphysician is someone who studies initiatives and esoteric truths, which means esoteric meaning things that you cannot see. Like when the church and the Bible says faith can move mountains, well, a metaphysician is going to want to know how that actually works. What's really going to make that mountain move? That's what, or how does prayer work? How do these things work? So you start off with metaphysics, and then you go into other types of physics. By the time you get through that for a couple of years, you get into the whole astral projection thing and the whole spirituality thing. And once you get to a certain point, then ultimately you become a guru. Sage is pretty much the same thing. It just has to do with what part of the world you come from. So sage and a guru is someone who has been studying something under the instruction of another for a period of time. Now, what I do is the kind of teaching that I do. The kind of teaching that I do is very specific. I seldom use the word believe because I think when you believe something, you leave room for doubt. So I don't like to use the word believe. So I'm going to be specific and say, I know. It wasn't just a situation where I was able to smell bread. It wasn't the fact that was so fascinating. What ended up happening is I ended up realizing that I have been hearing a particular voice all my life. It's not 1, 2, 3, it's just one. It's one voice and it sounds the same. I used to call this my guardian angel. I called it God speaking to me, all this. But the thing about this particular voice, it was doing things like it was doing things like telling me things that I could not have known. For example, I was driving down the 10 freeway one time through Los Angeles, and the voice said to me, "Curt, as fast as you are going, what if that car up there started spinning around on the freeway? Would you be able to avoid it?" The voice literally said all of that. And I would answer these voices when they came to me like that, and my response was, well, I mean, first of all, I'm going to see other cars' brake lights come on. When I see their brake lights come on, I'm going to automatically start putting my brake light on, and I'm just going to stop with everybody else, you know. And the voice kind of said, "Oh, really?" Just then. Now, I have 3 sons, and I don't mind saying I swear on my sons, because I just think that if you're telling the truth, nothing's going to happen to you. Now, if I was about to lie to you, oh, poor boys, but whenever I say I swear on my, let that just tell you that I'm telling the truth, absolutely. And I don't think my sons would appreciate me putting them up, like this. But I mean, hey, don't worry about it, sons. Telling you the truth. As soon as the voice said, the car right in the next lane that was about 4 car lengths ahead of me started spinning around on the freeway. When I passed by that car, I looked the man eye to eye. I saw this man's face, and I've never seen a look on a human being like that. He looked like what all the fear in the world would look like. And the voice said, "See, I told you to slow down." Now, that is just one example of this voice that I've been hearing ever since I was young. I can tell you that I've heard these kinds of things all my entire life. I was getting messages. I had no control of it. It was so, it got to the point I was so comfortable with this that I remember I was driving my stepfather's car one night, and it was raining. I was going to the clubs, and he had a Porsche, one of those little square ones, 914, little square kind, little cute kind. So I'm driving his Porsche to the club, and so I got to the gas station. And I put the gas in the car, and the car wouldn't start. And there was a car behind me, and it was, a little embarrassing. I'm driving, I'm thinking I'm cute, and so I'm, and the car wouldn't start. Well, I knew right then that it had to be those guardian angels not allowing my car to start. So I made a deal with, I said, look, car, this is embarrassing. How about if you let it just start? And I'm going to pull over on the street for about 10 minutes because you're probably not allowing the car to start because you know that if I just jumped in it, I would probably get in a car accident as soon as I got on the freeway. So I'll just wait, because this is embarrassing sitting here. And so car wouldn't start, ran, nothing. So I ended up pushing it off to the side. I said, okay, this is embarrassing. But anyway, about 10 minutes later, the car just started. Start up. And I was very happy that it was. However, as soon as I got to the freeway, what I saw was an accident that appeared to have happened about 10 minutes before I got there. And here you have this voice again. See, I told you. What I'm trying to explain to you is this is the most important thing you'll ever learn in your life. What I'm trying to explain to you is that there is something inside of you. This thing inside of you, it gives you the ability to rise in the morning. It gives you the ability to speak. It gives you the ability to without it, you would not exist. You would not be alive. It is what makes you alive. It's the electricity that runs through your body and that sparks everything. This thing is called a soul. Without this thing, you would not exist. You would truly be a lump of nothing. This thing we call a soul is real. In the beginning stages of the kind of work that I teach, this is the first thing that a person has got to know. This is the first thing that a person, let me make sure this, this is the first thing that a person is going to know when they get into this endeavor, that you have a spirit. Now, what this spirit is able to do, not only does it give you life, but it is able to navigate your life in any kind of extraordinary way that it wants to. I've seen it happen. I read a book recently by the actor Jane Kennedy. People my age would know who that is. She was this very beautiful woman and all that. She's written the most amazing book. And I've read this book, and she described a situation where she was swimming in the ocean, not too far out, but she began to feel an undertow or something to this effect, and she began to drown, and there was no one there to help her. And so while she was struggling, a man grabbed her, lifted her up, She held on to him for dear life, lifted her up, and walked her out of the water and onto the shore and set her down. When she turned around, she could not find the man. The man was gone. Now, the interesting thing about that is, I can assure you, I won't swear this one on my kids, but I can assure you that there was no man there at all. I feel that way because what she said was that she turned around and the man was gone, and then she called her mother and told her mother about this. And her mother told her something that I thought was very interesting. She kind of said the same thing I did, but in a different way. She said, that was your guardian angel. Now, let me tell you what it wasn't. It wasn't her guardian angel. I know exactly who that man was. Because if I've seen it once, I've seen it 100 times. I know exactly what that man was. I can tell you more stories. The one about George Norrie, the talk show host, the radio talk show host here in Los Angeles, probably all over the country. He tells the story about when he was a little child, and his grandparents owned a store, and they lived above the store, and he woke up one night and went downstairs, and a fireman came up to him and told him, son, go wake up your family. The building's on fire. Go wake everybody up. Tell them to run outside. So little George, 6, 7 years old, I guess, and he runs upstairs and wakes all his family up. And indeed the house was on fire. And they all got out of the house and they went, and stood outside, and the fire department showed up and they put the fire out and everything. Well, George's father wanted to thank the fireman that told his son, who, told his son to go wake everybody up. And the fireman, who was the captain, he said, I can assure you there was nobody here. We were the first ones here. And that person would have been me, and I definitely didn't go in there and tell a kid anything. When we got here, you guys were standing outside. See? But just like the Jane Kennedy story, that man was never there to rescue Jane. I know who it was. Nor was that fireman there to tell George Norrie as a child to go get his parents. I know who that man was. I know exactly who it was. Now, there are stories like this that happened all the time. And it wasn't God either. I know somebody, if I was a pastor in a church, I'd be like, then God. Yeah, it would be all about God, but I can tell you it wasn't God. Because if it was God, then I'm sure he would be showing up every time there was a fire, and most of the people in Altadena would all still be alive. But so if it was God, he'd save everybody every time, not just one person over here and then other people get burnt up. Or in the case of Jane Kennedy, he wouldn't save her because she was cute and other people drowned all the time. That's why I know it's not God. If it was God, he'd save everybody. It's not God. I'll tell you who else is not. It's not your guardian angel, like Jane's mother thought. If Jane ever hears this, I'm sorry, your mother, she was close. No, she wasn't close either, because it's not your guardian angel. This is the kind of work that I'm going to teach. I'm going to teach exactly who, how, and what that was. Wasn't God and wasn't an angel. I've seen this time and time again. I don't mean just on other people, with myself, because this kind of thing keeps happening to me. Now, I later on in life, I started a business. I started opening group homes for developmentally disabled adults. And when I did that, I had clients, a couple of clients who were schizophrenic. I know what schizophrenia is. It's almost like the worst thing that could ever happen to a human being, where you are hearing these voices and you can't turn them off. I know exactly what this is. However, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about something that's very specific and very personal. Now, everyone has this ability. You just have to, I was able to refine it because I knew what it was. I didn't know what it was. It just happened to me so much, to the point where mine would just say, Curt. I'd be like, what? What do you want now? What is it now? I just began to expect it all the time, and it was so personal that it was telling me stuff that this kind of thing will save your life. That's why I think it's the most important relationship you could ever have, because it will, in fact, save your life, just like it saved Miss Kennedy and George Noy's family. Like I said, it's not God, because it doesn't help everybody, and God already knows what's going to happen to you anyway. So it's not that. What I'm trying to explain to you is that something else I want to explain, that reincarnation, that's a subject that they like to talk about in metaphysics, and I'm going to get into the whole metaphysics thing. We're almost done here for today. However, reincarnation is a very big thing. A lot of people believe in reincarnation. I'm here to tell you that you do not, and you will not reincarnate. Hear my words. You do not and will not reincarnate. The people who are saying that, they don't quite know what they're talking about, or they're going to say, well, I meant what Curt's saying. What I mean is that when you so-called die, what's going to happen to your body? It's going to rot. If you're cremated, you're going to burn it up. What's going to happen to your brain? It's going to get burnt up too, or cremated, or you might be in a casket, and the worms are going to eat you and your brain, and you're going to go back to, you're going to break down until you, just like everything else does, you're going to break down and become part of Earth, the biology of, and chemistry too, actually, because of the chemistry happens first, because you're going to smell. But anyway, all of that's going to die. It's now going to reincarnate. However, that thing that I told you about, that soul that gives you spark and gives you life, that's what's going to reincarnate. That is what lives forever, not your body. Not your body. Your body is going to die, and I said, but that thing that gave you spark is going to live again. I am going to reincarnate. You are not. Now, how come I get to reincarnate and you don't? The reason I get to reincarnate is because I understand that part of me that is my soul is who I really am. And this part, this avatar, is not. This avatar, this part here, is just a conglomeration of nerves and neurons and biology that now there's a purpose for it. There's a purpose for it. But the thing that lives forever is the thing that gives this spark. This dies, that lives on. I'm going to reincarnate because I know that part is the real me and this part is not. Fascinating thing about the George Norris story of the fireman and Jane Kennedy. Guess who that was that saved Jane Kennedy? It was Jane Kennedy. That same spirit that is within you can appear as anything it wants to get the job done. That fireman that George Norris saw, that was him. That was his spirit saving his behind. Wasn't his time to go. When Jane Kennedy was drowning, if somebody had been sitting there on the side, they would have watched the whole thing, and all it would have looked like was Jane relaxed and rose up a little bit and came right on to the edge and got set down on her butt. That's all they would have seen. They wouldn't have seen the spirit. Only she saw that. Because it made itself seen so she wouldn't panic. If she had just started floating like a ghost did it, she might have got panicked and started screaming and jumped in the water. So it will appear as anything you want. Anything that it needs to appear to keep you calm. To keep you calm. The reason I say it's not a guardian angel because I know so much about this spirituality, which is the part that I'm going to teach. That part is not going to allow anything else to help you but it. It's not going to let an angel interfere with its business. Its business is to take care of you. The creator of the universe doesn't do this kind of work. He already knows what's going to happen. This thing is assigned to you. It takes care of you. It handles you. It does your business. It saves your life. It makes you breathe. That thing that helped Jane come out that water was Jane. The real part of Jane I'm talking about. Just like the real part of me is the spirit. The thing that helped Jane was a part of Jane that is going to live on. That thing was not finished. Jane's life was not over yet. The two of them had too much more to do. Too much more. And as I read her book, these two things have been working together. You have one. You have something inside that's doing the same thing with you. You just don't notice it. A lot of people do. There's only going to be 2%, I was told, of the population of the whole entire planet that's going to understand what I'm saying. A lot of people are going to say, yeah, I have a spirit, I hear a voice, but you're not going to be able to communicate with it the way I do. Because in order to communicate with this spirit, you have to more than believe. You have to understand the language of it. And you have to understand how to exercise it. It's like a muscle. A lot of things in spirituality is like a muscle. And if you don't exercise these muscles, you don't know how to get the biceps to get stronger unless you can't just pick up the weight in your kind of way and the muscle is going to grow. You're going to have to pick it up in a specific fashion. We're going to go through a particular kind of fashion that will allow you to communicate with your spirit. We're going to go through the step by step. It's going to work. It is going to work or not. If it doesn't work, what do you got to lose? But if it does, if it works, this is what you'll be able to do. Well, you can do what you want, but this is what I've done. with this ability. I made a deal with this spirit inside of me and said, okay, Mr. Big Shot, forget what I want to do, forget what I planned on doing in my life. I'm going to do what you want me to do. Here's the key to life: to develop that line of communication and then decide that instead of you fumbling around trying to figure out things to do, you decide that you're going to do what it wants you to do. Because it came in with a particular purpose. And if you don't know what that purpose is, forget all this manifest. I'm going to manifest this and I'm going to manifest. That is the opposite of what you should be doing. Whenever you call yourself manifesting this and manifesting that, what you're trying to do is make what your brain wants to do come alive. If you're trying to make come alive what your brain wants to do, that's the opposite of what you should be doing. You should be listening, hearing, and doing what your spirit came to do. That's why the world is in the position where it is in today. Simply because you have spirits that are not connecting with the people, because the people have been taught to not listen to this. Prayer, for instance. We're going to get into all that. However, it's been an hour, and so I'm going to be back. I'll be here every week. You guys, please like and subscribe, because it's encouraging to me. Ultimately, I'm going to have guests and callers call in, but I wanted to come back and reintroduce everything first. Tomorrow, I'm going to be attending the Conscious Life Expo in Los Angeles. So if anybody gets a chance to see me there, walk up and give me a holler, and I can explain things to you personally. I'm going to drop this video in the morning, so it's probably be too late by the time anybody sees this, So anyway, we have an awful lot of teaching, and I have awful lot I know of convincing. But when I say I'm here to do what my spirit wants to do, here I am, and I guess I am doing what my spirit came to do, and I honestly believe that it is the most important thing that I can be doing for humanity and for myself. Thank you for coming.
Let's go to Curt in Pasadena, California. Welcome to the program. Hi, Curt.
Hello. Thank you guys for having me.
Yes, sir.
Well, I am a spiritualist, which means my spirit talks to me. And we go back and forth, and we've been going back and forth since I was a child. And it will answer any question that I have for it. Like you, George, you always ask, what is deja vu? I can explain that to you, as well as the Big Bang. Yeah.
Tell me about the Big Bang, Curt.
Well, that's kind of long. I'd rather do deja vu first.
Okay.
Deja vu is simple.
We'll do the Big Bang during an open line Friday one night.
Thank you. So anyway, the deja vu, what that is since we live in linear time, there is no such thing as something happening and you saw it before. So when you think you've seen something, you could not have seen it because it could not have happened yet. However, we do know these things happen. The reason it happens is because your spirit lives in a place like this hyperspace where the past, present, and future is the same. It knows what's going to happen, so all you're doing is catching up to what your spirit has already seen.
Yeah, right. I call that panoramic time. It's like your mind is outside of time and it can see all of time from this higher perspective.
Subscribe and push the like button.